Reggie here, aka FitNoop1911, and I want to welcome you to another video. Today's video is all about the books that I picked up over the course of this weekend, and I have to say it was a pretty good weekend. So if you watched one of my videos, I think it was called the Massive Haul video, you'll know that that title of that video was very sarcastic because I ended up driving a couple of hours to check out a collection that had been picked over severely by some people that knew what they were doing because they took every single book of value. I ended up leaving after looking through this collection with about 3 books, and those 3 books really didn't amount to much of anything. They were, to be honest with you, place fillers for some of the runs that I was putting together. And so like any good collector, I'm always, hungry for the hunt. I'm always on the lookout for the next opportunity, hoping that I'm going to be able to find some really good books that I could add to my collection. And so this weekend, I think that I stumbled upon a pretty nice selection of books. I'm actually going to do something a little bit different for this video. I'm actually going to set the camera up in a different place so that you guys can actually take a close look at these books, which is a little bit different from many of my other videos where I typically talk right to the camera and hold the book up so that you could see it. I want to do something a little bit different for this one. So I hope that you guys enjoy it. All right, so the first book that I want to show you guys is Shadow Man #0, and this is a very striking wraparound cover that I remember seeing over and over in Wizard, Overstreet, etc. Never was able to get a hold of it when I was younger, but I saw it today and just had to have it. It is a gorgeous cover. I have no clue how much this book is worth. It really doesn't matter because it is such a wonderful cover. I can't wait to have this thing sent over to CGC so I'm able to see the front and back of this thing in a slab. But this is one of those books that is very iconic to me. As someone that started collecting in the 90s. And you're actually going to see a little bit of a theme here from the first set of books that I'm going to be showing you, and you'll notice what that theme is right away. So the next up is Turok, the Dinosaur Hunter, #1. This is very similar to the first in that it has that foil or embossed kind of cover. This one, however, is more of a picture frame than a wraparound cover, and I was able to grab not 1 but 2 copies of this. The second copy is probably in better shape than the first. The first one has a little bit of a slight bend. It was, none of these books were really well taken care of, and the first one here that I showed suffered just a little bit from being in a collection owned by someone who did not necessarily take the best care of his books. But both of these books are very iconic books to me from back in the 90s, as is this next book that I'll show, Exo, A Man of War, #0. Again, same thing here. It's a wonderful foil cover, wraparound, just very striking, and I was able to grab not 1 but 2 copies of this book. This guy's collection was, as I mentioned, not well taken care of. When I showed up, we walked into the vestibule of his home, and I expected to go, to a back room or to the garage or something like that. We basically stopped in the vestibule, and all of his books were in bins and cardboard boxes right in the entryway. So they were somewhat exposed to the elements. I mean, a little protected, but not the way that I would have chosen to do it. And so for that reason, a lot of the books that we actually looked at were in just terrible shape, and there was no way to save them. So there were many books that I had to pass on. But there were quite a few that I walked away with, like a Bloodshot #1. And again, this is a picture frame foil embossed kind of cover. Again, another iconic cover from the 90s. Not quite sure the value of this book, but it's just a gorgeous cover. It has some color breaks here on the left hand side. I mean, as you guys know, these black books are very tough to take care of in the best of circumstances. And as kind of I mentioned, this wasn't the best of circumstances. So speaking of not necessarily iconic books, but books that have some nostalgic value, Exterminators #3. This title, for whatever reason, is one that just captured my imagination as a teen. I have #4 in my collection and have had it since the early 90s. I saw #3, had to have it, and I'm hoping to get #2 and #1 as well. And I may end up doing a video at some point on the history of the Exterminators, the relationship to X Factor, and of course to X-Men, because there is a lot of connectivity there. Next up is another foil type cover, Gambit #1. There is I believe a variant version of this that is a full foil cover. This one just has the foil around his name and around his playing cards that he's throwing out to the reader. But a very nice cover. A couple of breaks here on the left hand side. Again, a black cover, a little difficult to maintain. Another foil book here, New Warriors #40, and we have Nova there on the cover. Just a really gorgeous cover to me. They did the name New Warriors in the foil, and then also his uniform has some foil on it as well. And again, I told you guys you would recognize the theme. You probably have already caught on where we're headed with this thing. This is Avengers #360, featuring the Vision on the front of an embossed foil cover. I'm not quite sure whether this was wraparound. I don't remember when I popped it open. I don't believe so, but this one has some breaks here on the left hand side, like many of the other books. I'm not quite sure if a press would fix that, but here is Avengers #363, and you've got Cap there in the middle of a battle, and a couple of breaks here on the left hand side. But another really gorgeous book. This book is one that this is the second copy that I've purchased in the last week or so. I picked up Bloodstrike 1 through, I believe, 7, and it arrived earlier this week. The #1 wasn't in great shape, so when I saw this one, I decided to pick it up. This one has none of the spine breaks on the left hand side, no color breaks. It's actually in very good shape, save for one little color break and indentation here on the left hand side. Now, what was funny about this guy's collection is that many of the books that you would think would be bagged and boarded weren't, and a lot of the books that shouldn't be bagged and boarded were bagged and boarded. There was no rhyme or reason to this guy's collection. And oftentimes I think that you can look at someone's collection and kind of know, what kind of collector they are, whether they're a Marvel guy or a DC guy or a superhero guy. This guy was all over the place. He collected everything, and it was very difficult to figure out, what he was truly interested in. But with that said, here is Captain America #113, and we have, I believe that's Bucky there crying at the grave of Captain America. This book is actually in pretty good shape for a 12-cent book, as is Captain America #116. It's a 15-cent book, white cover, in decent shape. Have a little bit of maybe some staining here on the left-hand side, but has some tight staples and could probably use a really good press. A little damage down here along the opening edge, but in decent shape, again, for a book of its age. Next up, Captain America 333. Who will be the next Captain America? I guess we will find out once I read that one. So these next two books are ones that I probably should not have purchased. Actually, I showed these in the wrong order, but neither here nor there. There's #1 and #2 of Legends. I actually thought these were related to New Gods. I was watching a video earlier, and someone was talking about some of the books that featured the New Gods and how they're coming out with I think it's a new movie. So when I saw these, I thought that these books were related to that. I don't believe that is the case, but that's what happens when you buy a title from a publisher that you're not that familiar with. I mean, you guys know that I'm more of a Marvel guy versus a DC guy, but mistakes happen. So the next book that I want to show is one that I found in a cardboard box, and as soon as I saw the book, I knew that I had to have it. I'm not a huge fan of this title, but again, when you see this book, you have to grab it, in my opinion. This is Star Wars #1. Now, what makes this very interesting, and I did not recognize this at the time, was that this is the price variant. This is the 35-cent version of Star Wars instead of the regular 30-cent. The book is not in the best shape. I mean, you have a lot of damage over here on the spine, some Marvel chipping on the right-hand side here, some creasing down in the corner. The good news, however, is that the staples are tight and not rusty. So there is that bright spot. So not only did I get #1, but I also picked up #2 as well. Star Wars #2, and like that, this one is also a price variant. But unfortunately, this one has a chunk missing out of the right-hand side. But again, when you see these books, I think that you have to pick them up. So I saw those and knew I had to have them. And then I saw number 16, so I grabbed it. Saw 17, not once, but twice. And both of these are in pretty decent shape. Number 18, and these are all, I believe, 35-cent books. Yep. And here is number 28, and it's a 40-cent book. Not a huge Star Wars fan, but again, these are some great books in great shape in a collection that again was not well taken care of, so they had to come home with me. Last up is my personal favorite. If you guys have been listening to any of my videos, it is Wolverine #1 limited series. I already have a copy of this that I had slabbed with CGC. But again, when you see this book, you have to grab it. It's not as in good shape as my original book, but it's still a #1 limited series. So again, a couple of weeks ago, kind of struck out with what I was doing in terms of taking a look at a collection, but I believe that I may have made up for it, and I'm curious what you guys think about it. Thank you guys for watching the video. Hopefully you enjoyed it. I encourage you to subscribe and leave a comment or two for me. Thanks a lot.